Welcome back to the Foundry. So I have just completed my work obligations for the week. Well, let me rephrase that. My commercial obligations, because the work's just getting started. I'm preparing for something that's somewhat unusual. So we're supposed to be getting some winter weather. And down here where we're at, that only happens really about once a year. And it's usually very mild. In this case, it may be a little bit more than mild, which happens about every 3 or 4 years. Whatever the case, I want to make sure I'm prepared for it. So I got a few things I got to do to the facility and some of the truck fleet. Now I know I've got good antifreeze in my vehicles, but in these parts, if you don't keep your batteries topped off, fully charged, the cold weather comes through and it just kills them. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the battery out of the forklift, get it inside, pull the battery out of the oil rig, get it inside, get them on a charger, just because they don't get used a lot. As for this truck here, this is one of my 2 winter vehicles. So I'm just going to crank it up. I haven't driven it in about 3 or 4 weeks. So I want to make sure, I want to make sure the battery's good on it to start with, because I really seemed like it was getting a little weak. But I'm going to crank it up and let it run a while. Just keep the battery. I'm going to keep the battery up to snuff, let the fluid circulate and so forth. Now this truck's not in service, not worried about the batteries or anything on it. This van is not in service either, but it still has a good battery in it, or it was the last time I started it. I got the doghouse out of it right now. See if she'll start. Oh yeah. That ticking sound is coming from the transmission. That's why I got this doghouse out. I've got to pull the transmission. That's why I haven't been using it. But I want to make sure the battery stays in good shape, because it's not all that old. So I'm just going to let these 2 run for a little bit, maybe a half hour. Just since I've gotten up today, the temperature's already dropped like 20 degrees. This battery, if I remember right, it's not all that old. But this forklift just doesn't get used a lot. I gotta set the camera down here. But this forklift doesn't get used a lot, and lead acid batteries do not like that. You guys up north are probably laughing at us down here, but I tell you, we just don't get winter. Very seldom, and it's supposed to be down. It's supposed to stay down in the teens, for several days. So I'm just trying to get everything ready. I haven't run my generator in a while, and I'm going to crank it up, make sure the battery's good, and make sure I have enough fuel. And I'll probably go get some more gas and fuel stabilizer. I always put fuel stabilizer in my generators, because my other generator, I let it sit for like 6 months. It never recovered. Carburetor shot. It's just the awful state of the gasoline that we get these days. Even the no ethanol stuff it just doesn't seem like it's what it used to be. Yeah, it looks like it's only got about a 1/4 tank in it. So I'll definitely have to go get some gas. Let's get the choke turned on. All right, I played musical trucks and got everything in the shop or out under the awning to stay out of the weather. They're all fueled up. Batteries are good. Fluids are good. I'm going to take and plug in rammer. Not because I have trouble with it starting when it's cold. It actually starts just fine. But it's the warm-up time. If I need to jump in it and go, warm-up time is significantly faster when she's been plugged in. So I'll do that. So as far as the building's concerned, there's a few key points I like to address every year before winter precipitation. One of the most important is this awning. Now, the awning has on this side an I-beam that runs across, and there's support posts. But one post has been taken out down there at the end. Now the pipe that it's constructed from, this awning was put in either 1943 or 1948. Obviously it's got some new tin on it and some, red iron Z-purlin, but the structure itself is from the 40s. And it's basically used oil-filled pipe is what they used to construct it. You can see a collar joint right there, and it is weak in places because I've noticed there's some wear through. It was pulled from an oil well, obviously, because it was worn out, and it's pretty common practice to use it as structural steel. And this is where the one support has been removed. So you get a snow load. Oh man, I just ran into. So you get a snow load or some ice load on it, and it will start to sag. This side's not too bad because of that I-beam, except for this spot. Now this side over here does not have an I-beam, and it sags under its own weight. I'll show you. You can see that pipe's got a bow to it. This one's a little bit worse. This is probably the worst one in the deal. I don't know if it's coming across very well in the camera. So what I do, if there's a chance of snow or ice, is I come in, I install some timbers to basically shore up this awning. Sometimes the snow catches me off guard because we just don't get them very often. And about 4 years ago, we had about 18 inches. I came out here and it was almost a horseshoe. Like, I could not believe the awning didn't collapse. All that's holding it up on that end is the pipe is butt welded to the building. And 1940s welds and thin pipe, I just can't believe they didn't snap off. But it held. It actually held up. But to avoid any catastrophe, I'm going to put some timbers up and shore up this awning in a few places. Once I do that, I'm really not concerned about the awning. So let's get that done. I moved the van out of the way to give us a little room. So what I got going on here is obviously sketchy. I happen to have this albatross sitting here, this immovable object. So I thought it was convenient. Rig up my bottle jack to push that awning up just enough to where I can wedge this timber up in there, and then I'm going to let it down, and it should scotch it in there really tight. I've just got it propped up there. That's why it's crooked. But yeah, that 2x6 is about to shoot out and pop me in the face, and you guys will get a front row seat to that, after which time you can recommend an orthodontist. But right now I had to use cribbing. Didn't have a timber tall enough, so I had to use some cribbing. I used to use concrete cinder blocks, and I've actually got them in use over there. I'll show you in a minute. this is just all I could come up with, in keeping with the spirit of using what we have. So I'm going to straighten that up with the sledgehammer, and then I'm going to carefully let the weight back down with the bottle jack, and we should be firmly in place. Truck springs were given a little more than that awning was. That's pretty darn solid. The reason the bottom looks a little goofy, there's actually a piece of pipe in the concrete that was welded up to that awning, and that's what's got me a little bit doing this number, but it's pretty darn solid. Again, this has worked as janky as it is. It's worked for me for a number of years. Like I said, we had 18 inches of snow on that awning, and I actually had to do this in an emergency situation. I didn't realize, nobody knew we were going to get that much snow. And so I come out here the next morning and the awning's about to collapse. So I had to do all this while there was a snow load on it, and it worked great, and has since then, every winter that I've had to do this. So I'm just kind of keeping with what I got as far as materials, and generally it's held up fine, so I'm not too concerned about it. Now over here around this dump truck, we have what's known in the industry as sus. This one I wedged in there pretty good. Kind of use the same method. I raised that pipe up a little bit, used a sledgehammer and wedged in that timber. Again, I didn't have anything long enough, so I had to block it up. And typically you would want to turn those cinders that way and stack them that way. I couldn't do that because they've got rough, jagged concrete on the sides, so that's the only way I could make it good and flush. But I think it'll be fine because I'm actually right in line with the center support in them blocks, so I don't think those blocks are going to collapse. Again, this has worked for a number of years. I've notched the top to where it won't easily shoot off of that pipe. Did the same thing over there, but this one is really the crown jewel. That's a 4x4. It is in there nice and tight. There's no movement at all. And so worst case, if that one snaps off or falls over, or that one, this one's probably enough to keep the awning up. These others are just insurance. And so we'll see how it goes if we get snow. What's going to be really funny is if I've gone through all this trouble and we don't get any winter precipitation. But usually it's the other way around. Usually I don't have time to prepare, and I'm out here in the middle of the night, emergency, snow's, knee deep, and I'm trying to get something done. So this year I actually got a heads up on the deal, watched the weather, and all odds and probability are that, like right now, it's showing 90% for snowfall. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do out here for the awning. And now for the next part of our preparation involves getting on the roof. So let's jump up there and see what we have to deal with. So this is what we're dealing with topside. This is going to take a better part of the day. Really, the only way to do it is by hand. And there's lots of sticks and debris, and I'm probably going to trim some limbs off of that tree. So yeah, not looking forward to it. Our roof coating's holding up very well. So happy to have had that done. Man, that was a good deal. But so anyway, I'm going to dig in and get this gutter cleaned up. And boom, gutter's clean, trees trimmed. Wasn't actually that easy. In fact, it was awful. It was a lot of work. I worked well into the night last night. Remember, there's a gutter on the other side of this building that's a little bit longer than this one, and it was just as bad. A little bit of ice in it now because it's 27 degrees, and the weather's moving in. I think it's supposed to start snowing in about 2 or 3 hours. I had one last thing to finish up. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get to fixing those little leaks because all I was going to do was silicone. It's basically just some screw heads that need to be silicone. And at 27 degrees, I'm pretty sure the silicone is not going to set before the weather moves in. So I'll just have to hold up on that. I did get some limbs trimmed out of this tree, and it was a lot of work. In fact, I am a little slow moving today because I woke up kind of sore. All I got left to do, oh, this is just wonderful. We got a rogue screw, which means there's a leak somewhere, more than likely. Yeah, it looks like it may have come out from right there. So when the weather warms up, definitely got some more work to do up here, but trim this tree here. Trimmed another one away from my buddy's building next door. Couldn't reach that one that's actually touching the building right now. I just couldn't, even with my pole saw extended all the way, I couldn't get over to it. All I got left to do is crank up this blower, and I want to get these leaves off of here. They've sat here for so long, they kind of turned to dirt. I kicked them up a little bit yesterday, but they kind of turned to mud. It's dry now because of yesterday, but anyway, see how the tin's starting to rust. So hopefully, having trimmed this tree, it'll minimize some of this, and eventually I'll have to have this roof redone like I did on that center building over there. But for the time being, I'm going to crank this blower up and blow these leaves off. Maybe knock off some of these twigs and things laying here. And I'm going to call it good for right now. So that completes the top side, and I ran the blower down here and got rid of all of the leaves because I don't want to be stomping around in a bunch of wet, nasty leaves when the snow melts. That leaves us with one last thing to accomplish to get ready for the winter weather. So this is where the water line comes up out of the ground into the building and goes up this wall and into the next building. You can see where I've put some JB Weld on it because when we do get weather that's in the low 20s for an extended, as a high, for an extended period of time, or obviously down in the teens and single digits, the first place my water freezes is right here in this building. So when it thaws out, it exposes pinholes and I have to patch it. So I will be glad to get all this replaced as time permits. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to insulate this pipe on this side because this is where it primarily freezes. I'm also going to leave water running inside the building, a sink or maybe the shower in the executives' quarters to keep water flowing through the rest of the system so it doesn't freeze. That usually works. It's got to stay down in single digits before it'll overcome that and just freeze anyway. But for today, we're going to put some insulation on this pipe. So I'm just going to use some basic pipe insulation. Went to Harbor Freight and bought some extension cords because, I know I've got a dozen cords. Can't ever find one when I need one. Well, I need a cord now because I want to put a space heater on the floor at the base of that pipe where it comes up out of the ground and leave that space heater running just for some additional security. And my trusty old 1990 space heater. And last but not least, I have my shower for the executives' quarters here at the Foundry. PEX pipe up there comes out of that wall. I have had it freeze right there before. So I'm going to put this space heater right here. And I think it'll be just fine. It's worked for me in the past anyway, so that heat will kind of drift up there. It doesn't take much. Now we just make some coffee and wait and see how bad it gets. I'll be surprised if it really amounts to much, but I've been surprised before. I'm just glad I had the opportunity and the time to prepare this year, because most years I either get caught off guard or I don't have time to prepare because I'm busy with work or whatever else. So this year I had like 2 days to get ready. Happens to be the weekend. So it all worked out well. I'd say I'm as ready as I can be. So let's see how it goes. And it seems to be rolling in right on schedule. Sticking to the street. It's more or less a heavy sleet right now. There's a little bit of snow mixed in with it. We'll see in the morning if it amounts to much. Well, it looks like we got a decent amount of what appears to be mostly like sleet. It's not as much snow. I'm sure it's mixed in there, but neighbors out on the skid steer plowing the street, and it's supposed to snow and sleet pretty much all day, so we'll see how it turns out. Thought I'd come out and check on the awning. It's a brisk 16 degrees out. I think the high today is 19. The sleet has finally let up and given way to snowfall. It's supposed to snow, I'm pretty sure, the rest of the day. Most of this is sleet. Let's see what we got up on the awning. It's not too bad. Check on our posts. They all still seem to be in place. Yeah, they got a little weight on them. All seems to be working out. Still snowing a little bit, but I think we've seen about the extent of it. That's what little bit of snow load we got. Everything held up good. This is more, than we've gotten in probably the last 3 or 4 years. Pretty easy. We did get, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, we got 18 inches. This has mostly been sleet. I don't know what the weight difference is between that and snow, but the building held up just fine. Trucks are doing good. I'm about to run into town right now. So yeah, we don't get much winter around here, so I just thought I'd do a video on it. So anyway, let me know how your winter's going in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.